The housemaid who became a mother figure, a millionaire story. My father pointed at Rosa and said, "Make her disappear." Security flanked her like she was furniture being moved, not a woman who taught me to tie my shoes and say thank you before I could pronounce my own name. The foyer of the Hale estate was a museum of my father's victories, oil portraits, glass cases, a staircase that curled like a signature. And yet the loudest thing in the room was Rosa's quiet. She didn't beg. She tucked her hands, rough from bleach and winter, against her apron and looked at me. "Julian," she whispered, "it's all a mistake. I run logistics software, not a charity. I pay people to tell me the truth in numbers." Rosa watched me code in the pantry when I was 17, sliding empanadas beside my keyboard. When the company finally turned a profit, she placed the first check inside a Bible ribbon and told me to treat it like a promise. "Call the police," my father said again, not even toward me, toward the cameras he knew were watching. He loved an audience. A missing emerald bracelet, an accusation of theft, HR papers already printed. The bracelet was a family heirloom, he said, and the staff was on notice. Claire stood behind him, eyes polished and empty. "It's best for everyone if there's no scene," she murmured, and I heard fear, not certainty. "Dad," I said, "we verify before we vilify." He smiled the way men smile at chessboards they believe they've already solved. "You can verify at the station." Rosa nodded at me once. No tears. She had wiped my nose on her sleeve, hidden bad report cards, and bought me a cheap tie for my first pitch deck. She never asked for more than Sunday afternoons in the park. I owed her, not because she raised me perfectly, but because she raised me at all, while my father chased applause and my mother's illness swallowed our house whole. Security's hands hovered near her elbows. My chest went tight. I opened my phone and wrote the first line of the ledger I would end up living inside. 6:12 p.m. Accusation. Cameras on. Rosa denies. Father pushes arrest. The door opened, winter gusting lemon polish off the marble, as a white SUV idled at the portico. I stepped between Rosa and the guards and said, "She doesn't leave without me." He smiled, thin as a paper cut, daring me to choose now. Rosa arrived the winter my mother's breath became an hourglass. I was 6 and angry at soap because it couldn't wash the hospital smell off my hands. She showed up with a grocery bag of wooden spoons and a sweater the color of thunderstorms. "I make noise with spoons when boys won't listen," she said, tapping a rhythm that made me smile despite myself. Within a week she knew where the light switches hissed, which rugs slid, and how to coax my mother to eat 3 bites of soup. My father learned to leave grief at the office. "The house runs itself," he liked to say, as if ovens preheated themselves and laundry folded because cameras blinked. He loved the sentence, the help. He said it like a single metal coin tossed to the side. When Rosa got me to practice multiplication by counting sock pairs, he called it cute. When she taught me to iron a shirt so I'd never be trapped by wrinkles or pride, he laughed and told guests, "Rosa's turning the boy into a valet." Rosa answered him with work. "Senor Hale," she would say, chin up. "The boy will know how to care for things." At night, when the house stopped pretending to be a museum and returned to being a place where we breathed, she taught me the names of herbs and the price of milk. "Money is how people talk when they're afraid," she'd say. "Listen to receipts and schedules. People lie, calendars do not." Years later, when I moved into a rental with slanted floors and started writing code after midnight, she sent me Tupperware labeled fuel. She kept my spare key under her rosary. When my first investor wanted to meet in the kitchen because the living room was stacked with parts, she put on coffee and said, "If you are going to change the world, sweep first." 2 months before the gala, Father walked into the staff hall holding a newspaper with his face on it. He touched Rosa's shoulder like he was patting an appliance. "Don't forget the champagne tonight," he said. When she asked about back pay for the new houseman, he didn't look up. "You people always want something," he said, and the hallway swallowed his echo. That was the day I began saving receipts like lifeboats. The first red flag didn't wave, it whispered. HR emailed a routine audit request for staff time cards, and Rosa's hours looked like a shadow, early in, late out, with gaps that didn't match my memory of breakfasts and night checks. Then a lien notice addressed to the estate arrived with a typo in Rosa's surname, Alvarez with an extra accent mark. "Clerical error," Claire said, handing it to a houseman like it was a piece of lint. But Rosa's hands trembled the way they did when she was low on sugar. Don't worry, I told her. I'll look. She shook her head. It's nothing, Mijo. They lost a bracelet. I never wore jewelry to work. She never did. Her wedding band lived on a chain tucked under her collar, worn thin by decades of bleach. That morning, I walked past Father's office and heard laughter, the kind men learn from clubs with cover charges. If you can't trust the help, he told someone on speaker, you raise their wages until you can. The bracelet was emerald, heirloom, valued at a number that turns the stomach into a calculator. The report said it vanished 2 days before the gala, last seen in a dressing room Rosa cleaned. The new houseman had signed a checklist. The cameras were offline for maintenance. Of course they were. When I asked security for logs, they said to talk to CFO Baines. When I reached Baines, he said, we'll get you a packet after the gala. Let's not distract the old man. Rosa's time card showed she left early that day. I remembered her bringing me caldo in a thermos that same evening, asking if I would walk the garden with her after dinner. Your mother loved the cypresses, she said. The time didn't fit. If she left early, who brought me soup? I checked my texts. A photo. Thermos on my desk. Time-stamped 7:13 p.m. Caption. Fuel. Rosa uses flip phones. She doesn't send photos. I scrolled back through months and saw 3 more messages with photos. Every one came from a number saved as Rosa, kitchen, and every caption had periods where Rosa would have used ellipses. Someone was writing as Rosa, and I intended to meet them. The gala was a chandelier pretending to be a knight. Crystal hung like frosted fruit, and everyone kept score with cheek kisses. Rosa hovered near the service door with a tray of glasses that never seemed to empty. Father took the stage to announce a scholarship fund and told a joke about learning to trust your staff. Laughter like silverware. Then security approached Rosa and asked her to step into the hall. I followed, already recording on my phone because numbers aren't the only things that tell the truth. HR waited with a printed termination letter and a non-disclosure agreement thick enough to be insulting. Sign now, the woman said, and we'll settle wages owed and avoid a police report. Rosa's mouth opened, then closed. I did not take anything, she said. I have been in that house longer than the carpet. Baines folded his arms. The bracelet disappeared on your watch. Camera's offline. Keycard shows your exit. We're being generous. I asked for the access logs. After you stop interfering, he said. Father appeared like a headline. Julian, he said with the smile he used on donors, be practical. We cannot look weak. The board expects accountability. Accountability starts with evidence, I said. HR slid a glossy photo across the table, a screenshot of an online listing with an emerald bracelet that looked like Mother's, posted from a burner account named R. Alvarez_68. The description used words Rosa never would. Provenance, estate. The bracelet's clasp, though, in the photo was scratched. Ours had been polished last fall. Rosa's eyes were dry, but her hands shook. If you want me to leave, she said, I will pack my uniforms and go. We'll have security escort you, HR said. And we'll need your phone. Rosa handed over a flip phone with a rubber band around it. Baines raised an eyebrow at the model like it personally offended him. Dad, I said, if you call the police without real proof, you are choosing theater over truth. He touched my shoulder. Son, you made your money with code. I make mine with appearances. Rosa looked at me like a lighthouse. Sirens began threading the night. They gave Rosa 15 minutes to clear the staff room she'd slept in for 20 years. Her belongings fit into 2 grocery boxes, 3 uniforms, a sweater, a chipped mug that said World's Best TA. I carried the boxes to my car and ignored the cameras following us like mosquitoes. I can stay with my cousin, she said. You have a life, Julian. Do not make war with your father for me. I'm not making war, I said. I'm stopping one. I drove her to a small apartment over a bakery that smelled like mornings. The landlord knew her by first name and last month's rent. You always pay, he said, pressing a spare key into my hand like improvised mercy. Claire called before I reached the car. You have to stop, she said. Dad's furious. Donors are asking questions. If you push this, they'll drag everything through the press. Rosa could end up deported. I put her on speaker, and Rosa raised a palm. Tell her I forgive, she said. Claire exhaled. Forgiveness isn't a legal strategy. That night my fiancée, Elise, drew lines in the air like a publicist mapping a crisis. Your board will panic if you challenge Victor in public, she said. Do what you can quietly. Don't become the story. I taped Rosa's spare key inside my wallet and wrote, 11:08 p.m. Rosa safe, donors spooked, Claire cautious, Elise strategic. Sleep didn't come. I matched keycard exits with kitchen purchases. 3 times in 6 weeks, petty cash advances aligned with maintenance, on cameras, and an emergency catering order that never happened. Each time, Baines approved the advance. I stared at a framed photo. Rosa and me at graduation, her hands clasped like she was holding the day steady. Father missed the ceremony for a meeting about a golf course. If reputation was a mirror, I was ready to crack it for light. I opened a notebook. Questions. Who posted the bracelet listing? Why were outages synchronized with cash? Who used Rosa's name as a mask? I didn't need courage. I needed proof, pressure, and one honest witness. Tonight I would pull a thread and watch a tapestry fail. At 7:02 a.m., I was waiting outside the estate gate with 2 coffees and a question that could ruin a family. The night guard, Luis, had watched me learn to drive in circles on the service road. Favor, Hamano, I said, handing him the coffee. Door cam backups from last week. The foyer cams were offline, but the staff corridor camera sometimes mirrors to a maintenance server. He stared at the cup, then at my face. If I help, he said, I don't want to lose my job. You won't, I said. And then, because truth is cheaper than bribery, I can't promise that. He sighed and typed. A download bar crawled across the screen. We watched a time-lapse of nothing. Mops, carts, a shadow of a shoulder. Until 6:47 p.m. 2 figures entered the dressing suite. One was Rosa. The other wore a cap pulled low and carried a hard case. Luis paused. That's not a staff case, he said. Looks like an AV rig. The clip jumped. When it returned, Rosa left alone. The time code showed a 23-minute gap, exactly when the foyer cameras were offline. I took the file and the system log that recorded the sync failure. At HR, I asked for Rosa's time cards and payroll records. The clerk rolled her eyes until I read the labor code section about itemized wage statements. She printed reluctantly. Rosa's overtime had been shaved in neat increments, initials in the corner, R.A. But I knew Rosa's signature. She looped her like a ribbon. These initials were block letters, efficient and alien. At the bank branch where the estate kept petty cash, the manager confirmed the emergency catering reimbursements were approved by Baines. Vendor codes? I asked. She shrugged. A private caterer. No address on file. Back in my car, I spread papers like a gambler spreads bad cards. Doorcam clip. Keycard logs. Payroll deltas. A photo of a bracelet listing posted by R. Alvarez_68. Every trail led to the same 2 letters, the same convenient ghost. I texted Baines, need 5 minutes. Today? He replied, booked. Next week. I texted Claire, who has AV access. She replied, ask Dad. I texted Rosa, I'm working. She replied, don't lose yourself. I decided I would lose whatever I had to, as long as it wasn't her name. The driver, Mateo, met me in the lot behind a car wash where nobody asked questions. He wore his uniform like a confession and smoked like the day was cold even when it wasn't. I don't want trouble, he said. I want truth, I said. He nodded at the recorder in my hand and shrugged. Baines had me deliver a sealed case to the east entrance the night the bracelet went missing. Said it was lighting gear for a speech rehearsal. What time? 6:28. I have the GPS ping. He forwarded the screenshot. 6:28 and 41 seconds p.m. East entrance. Photo of a service door. Who opened? A new houseman. Pale kid. Didn't last. The chef, Denise, remembered a catering order that never materialized. We prepped finger food, she said, then got told to hold it. No one picked up. I signed for supplies and never saw the event. She pulled out a spiral notebook and flipped to a page with neat columns. Petty cash advance, 600, approved by Baines. Order canceled, no reconciliation. Rosa covered Ellis's shift that night. She never left early. The ex-assistant, Brooke, agreed to meet at a coffee shop with a broken speaker that turned top 40 into static. Baines runs a shadow calendar, she said. He labels things light test or vendor check, but that's when favors happen. He uses staff logins so nothing points to him. Brooke slid a thumb drive across the table. Key names and code words. I kept copies because I don't like drowning. I cross-referenced Brooke's list with the bank PDF the manager had printed. 4 light tests matched 4 cash advances and 3 camera outages. In my notebook, I drew lines until the page looked like a nervous system. At the top of one invoice, initials weighted like a dare, R.A. In the margin, a second pair, V.H. Victor Hale. My father's initials lived where they didn't belong. Overlaying the timestamps on a simple grid, a pattern appeared. Gaps Baines controlled, bordered by people afraid to ask. I circled those initials until the paper tore and the room shrank. The bank officer I trusted, Mrs. Patel, who once flagged a fraudulent transfer from my company, agreed to a quiet review in her back office. Hypothetical, I said, sliding a list of vendor codes across her desk. If a fund labeled PR emergency paid out to a sole proprietorship named R. Alvarez, what would you need to verify identity? Articles of organization, tax ID, driver's license, she said, and ideally an in-person signature on file. She turned the monitor slightly. Hypothetically, if those documents existed, they would be here. Her cursor hovered over a PDF. I didn't breathe. The signature on the W-9 read Rosa Alvarez, but the R was a straight line, not a ribbon. The address was AP. Oh, box in a strip mall 2 towns over. Is it possible she opened this? I asked. Mrs. Patel frowned. She'd need to be present, or someone would need a notary who didn't care. She clicked audit history. The account had received 5 deposits over 3 months. Each memo field coded light test. Each withdrawal in cash within 48 hours. 3 deposits were approved by Baines. 2 by someone with the initials V.H. I took photos of the screen with my phone, then stared at the reflection of my own face in the glass. What happens if this is fraud under her name? I asked. She could be charged, Mrs. Patel said softly. And if her immigration paperwork is old or complicated, it could get very bad very quickly. At the mailbox store in that strip mall, a teenager with chipped nail polish checked a screen and told me the renter for that box presented a letter of authorization from her employer and picked up mail wearing a ball cap. She sounded like a smoker, the girl said. Older. No accent. She remembered cash payments and a business card with embossed letters, Baines and Partners. I sat in my car and thought about the stakes laid out like knives. Criminal charges, a record that could follow her into every background, a judge who wouldn't care that she learned my allergies and my nightmares before she learned the alarm codes. Rosa had built a life out of other people's mornings. Now someone wanted to erase it with paperwork. I dialed Claire next, because family secrets rot faster in daylight. Claire met me at a park where our childhood had happened between tutors. She arrived in sunglasses big enough to hide a life. You can't keep doing this, she said before hello. I handed her printouts, doorcam stills, payroll deltas, the W-9 with a forged R, deposits into the shell, Baines's approvals, and Victor's initials. She looked at each like x-rays of a fracture she'd learned to ignore. Say it, I said. Say Dad knew or didn't. She lowered the papers. He thinks tidy stories save jobs. By sacrificing Rosa? By sacrificing anyone who can't speak at the club. My plan, I said. We meet with Lawyer Carter and Mrs. Patel. We ask the board for a closed audit with screens and timestamps. We invite you and Rosa. We put the slush fund under lights and keep the doors shut until questions are answered. Claire rubbed her temples. You'll end Dad's reputation. He ended it when appearances outranked people. If I help, I lose everything, she said. You lose the lie, I said. You keep your name. She nodded once. You'll need a recording. Baines won't write anything down. I called him from the bench. We need clarification on vendor codes. He switched to lawyerly patience. Julian, your passion is admirable. These are administrative matters. Then say that on a recorded line, I said. He hung up. Carter answered on the first ring. Bring everything, he said. We'll make a chain of custody and schedule the audit. Elise's warning echoed. Don't become the story. But Rosa had already been made the story without consent. I wrote the sequence like code, gather proof. Authenticate. Present. Record. Protect Rosa's file. Prepare bail money. Call press only if someone lies under oath. Claire stared at the pond until a duck cut a clean line through our reflections. If Carter controls the room and you keep this off social media, she said, I'll be there. I won't lie for him anymore. She slipped off her sunglasses, and I saw what fear looks like when it tries to dress as poise. Just promise me one thing, she said. Don't humiliate him for sport. I won't, I said. I'll let the documents speak. I dialed my father, ready to hear the cost of love. Father chose a family dinner like he chose a venue for a verdict. The table was long. Candles tried to civilize the air. He waited until soup cooled. Son, he said, we don't air laundry. I'll make Rosa whole. Quietly. You and I can resolve this. He slid an envelope across the linen. A term sheet for a charity in Rosa's name, a non-disparagement clause, and a promise to reassign Baines. You want me to trade her name for a fund and a gag, I said. I want you to protect your company and your future, he said. This is a miscommunication, not a crusade. Claire washed her napkin. I put the envelope back in his hand. I'll protect my people by telling the truth. He leaned forward. Don't make me choose between you and the board. You already did, I said. He smiled without joy. Appearances are the guardrails of power. Step outside and you get hit. My phone buzzed. A text from Carter. Here if you need spine. I stepped to the terrace. He answered on the first ring. They offered you a fund, he said. Then you're over the target. Decline in writing. Confirm the audit. Move up the date if possible. When I returned, Father chatted about weather and golf, the way men do when they place a thread under a napkin. In the hallway lined with photographs of handshakes, he caught my arm. If you embarrass me, he said, I will make you small again. You can't shrink what you didn't build, I said, and pulled free. In the driveway, Elise texted, How bad? I typed, Worse than we guessed. Audit moving up. She replied, I'm with you, but guard your company. Predators smell chaos. I thought about payroll, engineers, vendors, and the word that had never bounced. Back at my office, I drafted 3 emails. To Carter, attaching evidence list, requesting closed session audit tomorrow at 2 p.m. Arrange projector and witness statements. To Mrs. Patel, please authenticate bank records on screen. To Claire, please bring Rosa to witness. Claire replied, Will come. Carter responded, Confirmed. I'll notify the board and lock the room. I printed name placards. On Rosa's I penciled, Thank you for every morning. I chose Rosa's dignity over safety, and the night held its breath. At 1:58 p.m., the boardroom smelled like coffee and denial. Carter stacked folders with the calm of a surgeon who'd rehearsed every cut. Mrs. Patel rolled in a small monitor and a printer that still believed in paper. Claire arrived with Rosa in a navy cardigan that made her look like every school principal who ever kept a hallway safe. She took my hand and squeezed once. No more spoons, she said. Make noise with truth. Baines walked in with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Father followed, flanked by 2 directors who wore philanthropy like a cologne. Let's be efficient, he said. We all have busy afternoons. Carter nodded. Efficiency is the friend of clarity. He clicked the remote. The first slide showed a timeline. Camera outages, petty cash advances, vendor codes, access logs. Mr. Baines, Carter said, do these approvals reflect your actions? Baines leaned back. I approve many things. That's my job. Mrs. Patel printed the bank statements. These deposits into our Alvarez sole proprietorship, she said, were approved by your login. Baines examined a page like it had personally disappointed him. I don't recall, he said. Could be a delegated action. And these initials? Carter pointed to V. H. Victor Hale, Father said lightly. I sign many things. That's my curse. Laughter did not arrive to save him. Rosa sat still, hands folded, eyes on the table, as if stillness could keep the floor from tilting. Carter advanced to the doorcam clip. We watched Rosa enter the dressing suite with a cart. We watched the gap. We saw the figure with the hard case. We watched Rosa leave alone. Who was that? Claire asked. Baines shrugged. Hard to say. The room hummed with expensive quiet. Play the audio, I said. Luis had stripped 2 seconds of sound from a corridor mic. A voice saying, Light test. Clock starts now. Then a second voice. Copy. The second voice was my father's, younger by a microphone, unmistakable by a lifetime. He looked at me, and the smile finally fell off his face. Carter did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. He clicked to the next slide. The W-9 for the shell company, the straight line R, the notary stamp from a mail store, and the audit log tracing approvals to Baines's office computer at times that matched his calendar entries labeled light test. This is a slush fund, Carter said, laundered through a name that was convenient to weaponize. Mrs. Patel held up the statements. Cash withdrawals within 48 hours of each deposit, she said. Amounts consistent with petty cash advances. She turned to Father. 2 were approved by VH. Father lifted his chin. I sign many routine matters. Routine, Carter said. Like instructing a light test. Clock starts now in a restricted corridor? Baines spread his hands. We were patching a PR problem. By accusing a woman who raised this family, Claire said, voice sharper than I'd heard since we were children. Father shot her a look that used to silence rooms. It didn't work here. Rosa reached into her bag and unfolded a piece of stationery. Your mother wrote this to me, she said softly, and passed it to me. The letter was dated a month before my mother died. In her careful hand, Rosa, you are the steady shore my son returns to. If my husband forgets, remind him that our home is built on the hands that keep it. The bottom edge was water-stained where tears had lived and dried. Carter placed the letter on the document camera. The words filled the screen like a benediction that refused to be privatized. This meeting is now about accountability, he said. Mr. Baines, did you create the shell? Baines stared at the table. On advice of counsel, I invoke my rights. Mr. Hale, Carter said to my father, did you approve payments and instruct actions that framed Ms. Alvarez? My father inhaled like someone about to dive without knowing the depth. There were optics, he said finally. Donors expect swift narratives. We needed a culprit that could be let go. My name, Rosa said, is not a narrative device. Silence settled, heavy and exact, and then the door opened to an audience no one invited. 2 detectives stepped in with a folder and a tone that turned the room honest. Carter had alerted them once the chain of custody was intact. Mr. Baines, the taller one said, you're under arrest for fraud and falsifying business records. The word arrest took the oxygen and folded it in half. Baines didn't protest. He placed his watch on the table like a man returning a rental. The board moved fast because stillness had become liability. They voted to remove my father as chair, pending review. He didn't blink. He stared at the far wall, where family portraits usually hung, and saw a future with nowhere to land. By evening, the story raced from screens to whispers in grocery lines. Sponsors paused campaigns. A venture partner asked for a call to understand your risk posture. An engineer messaged, this is right. Another wrote, I can't afford instability. Rosa stayed at my apartment because the bakery stairs were steep and the world had turned predatory. I made tea badly. She watched the ceiling fan turn the room by inches. You will lose things, she said. Do not lose yourself. I nodded like a son who thinks nodding can anchor a house. Claire texted, I'm proud of you. Elise asked if we should postpone the wedding. I stared at our calendar and realized noise doesn't fade. It settles into corners. I opened my ledger. 9:11 p.m. Baines arrested, father removed, sponsors retreat, staff divided, Rosa safe, center unsteady. Investors wanted forecasts with footnotes for the human heart. Will your father retaliate against your business? One asked. He already tried, I said. We build products that move goods honestly. I told reporters the only sentence that would not rot later. We are cooperating with authorities, and we are protecting Ms. Alvarez. Near midnight, my father called. You did this, he said quietly. No, I said. You did this. I stopped it from happening again. Silence followed, like the pause after a toast that doesn't land. You made a choice, he said. Remember that when the bill arrives. Inside was an ultimatum written in a hand I knew too well. The ultimatum was brief. Withdraw public statements, issue a joint apology for misunderstandings, accept a private settlement, and restore family unity. I filed it under costs and then under answers. Carter responded with statutes. The DA moved to clear Rosa formally. The letter came on a Tuesday with a seal like a small sunrise. Rosa didn't smile. She exhaled, complete, like a room welcoming back its air. Now you rest, she said. Rest meant paperwork. We opened a proper account in her name, with Mrs. Patel watching the screen. We found a condo near the park with an elevator that didn't groan. She chose curtains the color of cloud edges. I launched a staff rights initiative with 2 competitors who'd read the same headlines. We offered wage audits and legal clinics on Tuesdays. Rosa insisted the coffee be strong. Claire volunteered at intake, wearing a plain sweater like armor that worked. As for my father, I set conditions: therapy, public acknowledgement, and restitution to every staff member harmed. He sent a check and booked a therapist. He did not write the acknowledgement. I told him the door would open when the sentence did. "You have become hard," he said. "I have become clear," I answered. At home, Elise and I moved the wedding to a smaller room and wrote vows about honesty and maintenance. We built routines not dependent on crisis: short Sunday calls, monthly legal check-ins, recurring payroll audits. Healing wasn't drama. It was documents, boundaries, and showing up after cameras left. Claire texted a photo of a notebook with truth written small in the corner. "Practice," she said. We met for coffee and talked about books, a resilient plant, and Rosa's caldo recipe. Rosa's nameplate went on the mailbox that afternoon. We set up a healthcare plan through my company's vendor because loyalty should buy more than flowers. She refused a stipend for extras until I said it covered her choir dues and a new winter coat. She laughed and said, "Then it is for work." Before I answered, the past knocked once, asking to be let in. Money is a microphone, and for years my father spoke into it until the echoes sounded like virtue. Rosa never had a microphone. She had mornings, and the floor under her feet, and the names of spices, and the way grief can be folded into dough until it becomes nourishment. I used to think I became self-made by escaping that house. I understand now I was made by the person who stayed. People asked if I forgave my father. I don't know. Forgiveness is a tool, not a trophy. Boundaries are what keep tools from becoming weapons. He started therapy. He sends emails I sometimes read. He wrote checks that cleared. Sometimes I imagine him walking through the estate, pausing at the staff hall, realizing how many lives fit between his schedules. When he writes the acknowledgement, "We will eat dinner and say hard things without pretending they are easy." Rosa's name is now on a lease, a bank account, a health plan, and the plaque outside a Tuesday legal clinic called Steady Hands. When she visits the office, engineers stop and straighten their spines without knowing why. She hums again while she works. The sound is small and enormous. I've learned that protecting caregivers begins with paper. Keep copies of pay stubs. Ask for itemized statements. Photograph schedules. Speak as a group. In my company's handbook, we added a household staff bill of rights, template anyone can download and use with their relatives or employers. The steps are boring, which is why they work. If you grew up held together by someone who picked up the pieces others dropped, write their name somewhere official. Make it harder for the world to pretend they are disposable. When you sit at a table built by hands you didn't see, learn their names, then ask what the chairs owe them. Rosa taught me to iron a shirt because wrinkles lie about what is clean. I iron now before big meetings. It slows me down enough to remember who I'm trying to be. We aren't measured by the portraits on our walls. We're measured by who keeps our lights on and our hearts open. Because tomorrow, someone else will ask if we're listening yet.